All right, here's my table saw with the box for the router that I put in. I chose an MRF23EVS Bosch router, which is the router that has a handle-based trigger system and a fixed base. The reason why I chose this particular router, Bosch router is generally well reviewed, but also because it has this nice functionality. Here it is mounted underneath the table. Has this nice functionality where you can use a key that goes beneath the table and turn it one way or the other, and it will raise or lower the router to make it so that you can make adjustments. And this is for micro adjustments is what it normally says, but it can raise and lower the entire height of the router, so that makes it very useful for saving you from needing to get underneath the table all the time. For mounting the router itself, use this Craig insert plate, which has been just generally really fantastic. It's really sturdy, no problems with it at all. It has very nice little pre-drilled, not pre-drilled holes. In this case, I got one that was completely undrilled because I needed to drill this keyhole anyway, and I wasn't quite sure what router I was going to get at the time. So I got one that didn't have any holes in it at all, but it has little dimples on the back of the plate for you to drill your holes into that the dimples match all popular router patterns, including this one. And so that made it really easy to pre-drill these, or to drill these holes through, and the instructions were really excellent. Other than the base, which worked out really well on this router, the other features of this router, or one particular feature in particular, made it not quite ideal for this use case, and that is this soft start functionality. Soft start is not so great for a table saw application because while turning on and off the router is fairly nice, like it has a lock behind this trigger, so I don't need to reach underneath the table and and squeeze this in order to get it started. Instead, I can just lock the handle on all the time and then hook up an external switch. An external switch like this one, which this one is for the table saw itself, not for the router. Because I didn't want a simple on-off switch, I wanted a variable dial like this. So this would make it so that I could both turn on and off the router from not underneath the table, but also adjust the speed of the router. And from what I'd read, this works with pretty much every router. You just turn the router speed up to full, and then you use the dial to scale down the router speed. But it turns out this box, and pretty much everyone like it, is not compatible with is not compatible with soft start routers. And so for that reason, we really would not recommend this router for a table-based application, because I don't want to get under the table for any reason, including to adjust this little dial, which is where the speed configuration is. So we'll see. I might end up replacing this router with a different one. The amount of work it took to get all this set up is less than the router, and the router looks like it. I mean, it's been. I tried cutting some things. It's a great router. It probably would be really excellent for handheld work because of the handle location. And the variable speed and soft start, those are all great safety features, but for a table situation, it's just, I don't know, it's a disappointment. Okay, so another thing with retrofitting a table saw into, or a router into a table saw, is the fence situation. In many cases, there are extension tables that you can get that would put your router on the end of your table saw, which is a great setup. And had I had the room to do that in my workshop, I would have just gotten an extension table off the left side of my saw. However, due to space constraints, that is not a viable option for me, which is why I inserted it onto the right side of my table saw, with the hope that I would be able to use my table saw fence on the router itself. However, I knew going into this that I can't just use the table fence directly with the router because of the direction of the motion of a router. It spins in a counterclockwise motion, and if I were to take a workpiece and hold it up to a router bit that were spinning in this direction, once the bit caught the piece of wood, it would just shoot out onto the other end of the table, chip up the work real bad, and possibly injure someone. And so when working with a router, you always have to be working against the motion of the spinning, and that means having the workpiece on the left-hand side of the bit as it is spinning, which means that you can't just use the fence itself, because if the fence were all the way over here, the cutting bit, wouldn't be able to extend up. So you need to have a fence that has a hole in the middle for the bit to extend upward. And I looked online quite a bit for a fence that I could just clamp to, a router fence that I could just clamp to my table fence, but it doesn't seem that that is a very common application. However, there are tons of plans on the internet for custom router fences, including this particular situation that I'm in. And though I didn't use direct plans for converting a table saw fence into a router fence, I used a set of plans from Popular Woodworking, which was really, really close to what it was that I wanted to achieve and looked really nice. And so enter this guy, which was, it took me, it was probably a day-long project, but with lots of interruptions, so I did it over the course of the weekend. I didn't really want to make this attachment fence, honestly. I really would have preferred to have bought a fabricated one, but there just weren't any that were suitable for clamping onto a table saw fence like this. So when I need to do some routing, I'll just slide the fence over, raise the router, or put in a router bit, and raise it up a little bit, and then clamp it on like this. It'd be a little bit tighter, of course, and then take my vacuum pipes. I haven't yet made a connection for it yet, but I would split this and then, run a vacuum tube over here to the router vacuum, and then I can open up these little doors here, and that allows me to bring the fence over the router to the correct side of the motion, and then I can push my workpiece along and it will go against the spinning of the router bit and make for a nice little cut. So this box I actually was really pleased with. It's just made out of MDF board. It's got slots on the back. The Popular Woodworking plans had it only with the one set of bolts instead of two. I just wanted a taller fence, or as tall a fence as I could do reasonably, and I put in 2 sets of bolts for that. And the Popular Woodworking version didn't have a back side on it. It just had triangle pieces here to support the front of the fence, and instead of using triangles, I just simply made a square and then put on a back piece, and that allows me to easily put a clamp on there. And other than that, it's pretty much the exact same design. So that's pretty much it for this little router table conversion project. I think that it will achieve my goal here of essentially gaining a router table in my workshop with no loss of space, because already this table was already taking up the space in my workshop, and with adding no new extension and not going off the left-hand side, I haven't lost any space at all. So I hope you enjoyed watching this particular video. Thanks for watching.